Go to the Boardwalk Honda hotline now. Talk to the Flyers general manager as the season finishes off here, as the Flyers, of course, lose to the Penguins a couple of weeks ago. And now the offseason is here. Ron Hextall joins us on the Boardwalk Honda hotline here. Ron, how you been?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you?
We're all good. Good to have you with us. Thanks for giving us a buzz here as the offseason, obviously, for you guys came a little earlier than you'd liked. Overview of the season now that you've had a week or so to look back. Feel good about what you saw?
Well, I think first and foremost, the playoffs was disappointing. I think it was a series that we shot ourselves in the foot. So it's always hard when you don't do everything you can to win and feel like you could have done better. Certainly, just with the 4-2 lead in Game 6 there, pushing it to Game 7. But there's areas prior to that we all felt like we could have done better. But you know what? It's a learning experience, and we'll certainly learn from it. We need to. But I think if you go back to the overall season, I think we had a pretty good year. I think we got to find ways to keep our lows from being as low as they are. You know, the 10-game winless streak was obviously not good, and we need to knock some of that out. I mean, if you look at most teams, I've looked pretty hard at it. Most teams do have 6-7 game stretches where they're losing or winning streaks, so that's not really. But 10 is certainly not acceptable. So we need to get better there. Also, from period to period, I was talking to the coach the other day, and we both agree period to period sometimes come out and have a great first period and then come out in the second period and be equally as bad as we were good in the first. So there's areas where as a group we need to become more consistent and more diligent throughout periods of a game and the entire season. I think our young players played pretty well for us and certainly grew this year, so that's a positive. And obviously Giroux and Voracek had bang-up years, and for G, who had a down season last year, to come back certainly was good news for us moving forward here.
Now, Ron, what do you think is the separation between you and, say, Pittsburgh or Tampa or Boston? When you see those teams that are still performing, where is that separation from your club and those?
I think it's really the depth of our lineup. We need to get deeper. We got deeper this year with putting Nolan Patrick in and Konechny coming to a higher level. But we need, Lindblom was in there at times, looked pretty good. So we need a little more depth up front. And then on the back end, chances are we're going to go with a couple young kids next year. So, but they're also, and I said this at the year end, our young kids, give you an example, Robert Hagg he's played 4 years of pro hockey now. So as young as Robert is, he's got to give us a little bit more, and Ghost has got to give us a little bit more, and Travis Sanheim next year will be a third-year pro, so he's got to raise his level, and Provy's got to get a little bit better. So again, it's the depth of our forward group and the young guys on the back end. If we could supplement it with a veteran defenseman, we'd certainly like to do that, but whether it's possible or not at this point, I don't know.
Flyers GM Ron Hextall with us. And Hexy, we've had Steve Coates on before talking about if you're building a team, you build from the net out. Boy, if I had $1 for everybody that says the name Carter Hart, I'd be a wealthy man, right? They all just think he can play tomorrow. Could you speak to your goaltending situation and how patience sometimes is a virtue?
Well, you also have to take a look back at history, and I said the other day that there's not many kids that play in the league in goal as 19 and 20-year-olds. As a matter of fact, some of the top guys in the league right now, and a lot of the guys playing right now, if you dissect it to the 8 teams still playing, those goaltenders spent quite a bit of time in the American League. So that's certainly a good route to go. It doesn't mean 100% Carter will be in the American League because that's got to play out, but again, you look at a kid like Braden Holtby, who I think I want to say he played over 100 games in the American League. I know I looked at it the other day, but most of the guys playing right now have played in the American League. It's one step. It's no different than going to kindergarten before you go to grade 1 and so on and so forth. So it's another step in the process for Carter, Felix Sandstrom, whoever whoever the guys might be that come up in the next couple of years. And it's no different for forwards. I mean, Travis Konechny came in 2 years ago as a 19-year-old. We didn't think he'd make our team, and he did. So credit to the kid. And as you look back over the 2 years that Travis has played, he's been a very good player for us. So he was ready for that. But obviously he was a first-round pick, but those are more the exceptions than they are the rules.
If you get to training camp and Hart's your best goalie in camp, just lights out, do you have an issue keeping him up as your goalie next season?
You know what? We'll deal with that at the time. I mean, he's part of what you look back at is their history in junior, college, wherever they play, how consistent they were. Don't forget, this isn't just a player. This is the human being, too. It's a lot to put a kid right on the National Hockey League team. It's a lot, and a lot of kids go the other way. So Carter is a mature kid, and obviously he's been a very good goalie in junior hockey. But we'll see where we're at that time with really any of our young players, and we'll make those decisions at the appropriate time.
Flyers GM Ron Hextall on with us on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline for a few minutes. And, Ron, I know that for the first time you have the handcuffs off a little bit. You actually have some free agent money to spend, and that's a question that everybody, okay, there's big names out there, but there's chemistry issues. Is it the right fit? Could you speak to being able to finally be able to at least just have the option to go out and get some guys?
Yeah, it's certainly nice to have the option. We're going to look at anything we can to improve our hockey club. As in every year, you can't look at it in a vacuum and say, okay, we got a lot of cap space this year, so let's go, because we got to worry about next year, the year after, and the year after. And if you look at the progression of our young kids, we get a lot of young guys we're going to have to sign here. Provorov's up in 1 year, Hager's up right now, Konechny's up in 1 year, Patrick's up in 2 years. Even the kids that are just turning pro this year, it's only a 3-year cycle where we got to sign them. So there's a lot of things that come into play here when you're looking at the free agent market and long-term deals and what you have in place. And if we sign player X, then we've got these two guys ahead of them. And then next year, this guy comes in, but we're now boxing him out. So there's a lot that goes into those decisions. But in saying that, if we can do something that is going to help our group and works out for future years, we're going to be first to look at it. We want to get better. We want to get better, and we want to be better than we were this year.
And, of course, you always have an eye on the future. The deal with the St. Louis Blues, that worked out just fine. Right now you get 2 first-round picks.
Yeah, that was, when you looked at that deal at the time, that was a good deal for both teams. They got a player, obviously, that they really liked and played extremely well for them. And, we got, Laterra, who was a serviceable player for us. And, we really liked Morgan Frost at the time when we made the deal. He was the guy that we were focused on. We got him. He's had a good year, and now we got another pick. So that's one of those hockey deals that worked out for both teams.
Ron Hextall's with us. Obviously, you played goal, and we had a discussion about a week or so ago that since the 87 season, I don't know that there's been a better goalie in the franchise. That's a long time than Ron Hextall in 1987. So if Hart's not the guy, are you comfortable with what you currently have, or would you say, you know what, we do need to improve in that area, or were you happy with your goaltending this year? Well,
people seem to forget now, maybe because the way the playoffs went, that Brian Elliott had a real good year for us. He was a really good goalie for us. He was good for our young defensemen, gave us really solid goaltending, and then, he gets hurt there. He gets hurt. What are you going to do? So that part of it is in place for us. Els gave us real solid goaltending. And Nuvi, when Nuvi was hurt again, that's the tough one. Whether Nuvi can stay healthy or not, that's a question that he's going to have to answer come next year. But I think, as we saw in the playoff series there, Game 5, when he's on his game, he's very, very good. The positive at the end of the year, Nuvi's going to go out to Kelowna this summer for 10 weeks and train with a specific goaltender oriented trainer. So he's very serious about his career. He understands it's an important year for him for the rest of his career, and he's totally committed to doing what he's got to do. So he had surgery today. He had some things in his hips that need to be cleaned up. So hopefully Nuvi gets healthy and has a real good summer, great summer training, comes into camp and shows us what he can do and stays healthy.
Now, you mentioned G and Voracek and Simmons. Is there any thought in your mind this offseason that, you know what, maybe we need to shake that core up a little bit? Or are those three guys that you feel are definitive pieces of next season?
Well, you never know what is going to come along, so I can never comment on any player in the organization in terms of what's happening, and I wouldn't do that anyway. Mm-hmm. What I feel about those players have been very good players for us, and we also feel like they're going to be very good players for a number of years here. So certainly not a priority in terms of looking at those guys. We are focused a little bit right now on our young players. We got the Phantom still playing right now. We got Lindblom playing. Nick Abu-Kubel down there has had a real good year. Travis Sanheim's down there playing. Phil Myers is playing. So we got some kids that are Alex Lyons playing that are getting better right now. So that's a little bit of our focus. But again, in terms of making our team better, making sure like G and Jake have to come back and play the way they played. Simmer had surgery today, so I think Simmer's going to be terrific in September, October. He's going to be hungry as heck, and I believe he's going to come out and give us a real good year. So we got some good things going on, certainly for next year. But again, we're going to look at ways to try and get better here.
Now, would you, Ron, say that you have a top priority? Is there something at the top of your priority list that you want to get accomplished this offseason?
You always look at the middle of your lineup. If we could strengthen our center ice position somehow, we certainly look at that. It's easy for centermen to play the wing. We've got a number of them now. G seems to have settled in on the wing, and Jordan Wheel can play the wing. So if we could, Scotty Lawton played the wing towards the end of the year. So if we could strengthen our center ice position, we'd look at that. As I mentioned, we've got a couple young defensemen that are going to come and fight for jobs next year. So I would suspect that we'll hold there. But if we could add a defenseman one way or another, a veteran that's not too old, we'd at least look at that.
Before I let you go, Ron, Dave Hextall, your box where you watch the home games is pretty high up there. And at the end of that series, obviously it didn't go the way the fans wanted. They started chanting things. But Dave Hextall, what does he bring to the table? How has he grown in his time with the Flyers? And why is he the right guy to be behind the bench for you?
Well, I think, first of all, Hack brings a real professionalism and a bit of a calmness to our group. I know people, one of the complaints has been he's not emotional and this and that. Well, I said this the other day. He's not an actor. And if I'm looking at pro sports and who's the best coach in pro sports, I think it's Bill Belichick. I think it's hard to argue that. I guess there's some other guys there you could say are close, but he's a pretty good coach, and he doesn't have arms flying all over and yelling and screaming like a lunatic. So Hack brings a professionalism. He's competitive, and certainly there's some things go on behind closed doors that people don't see. So there's no lack of competitiveness there. Hack, I believe, has done a real good job with our young players. If you look at most of our young guys, they've all taken steps, whether it be just over the course of the year, the last 2 years. Nolan Patrick from first half to second half. Travis Connect, he's grown a lot. Scotty Lawton came back up this year and did a good job for us. Shane Gostisbehere's game has grown a lot. Robert Hagg. I can go through all our young guys. Travis Sanheim and Oscar Lindblom. All our young guys have made progress, and that's right now what we want is our young guys to get better, and guys like Giroux and Voracek and Simmons to maintain what they've done, and that's how we're going to get better. We got more young guys coming. And when you have a younger team, there's upside with your team. So that's the direction we're headed, and we feel good about certainly our coaching staff and where we're at as an organization, albeit it was disappointing in the playoffs.
Last one for you, Hexy, and we appreciate you spending some time with us. No one maybe better than you knows the Flyers fan base and the crowd. G had some comments that was asked the other day about the fans booing. What was your takeaway from that?
Well, I think the way that came across wasn't exactly the way that certainly that G meant it. I think it was presented a little bit differently. You know what? Everyone in this organization, from our players to our staff, appreciate our fans. Our fans are passionate, and you know what? We appreciate that. I would much rather our fans be passionate than sit on their hands the whole game. So I think, you know, when I sat down there for Game 6 in our building and heard the noise and the passion at the start of that game, quite honestly, it kind of got me excited for a long playoff run here. So hopefully we can reward them for being so passionate and have some long playoff runs in the next few years here.
Flyers GM Ron Hextall here on the Sports Bash, and of course you can hear Flyers hockey next season here on 97.3 ESPN, and we'll certainly have our eye on the offseason. Ron, we appreciate you spending a couple minutes with us. Thank you so much.
All right, it's been a pleasure.